Hi guys, my name is Phoebe and I'm your social secretary for PASS, and I also have a massive passion for photography. So I thought I would do this workshop just to basically explain how I go around taking photographs of buildings, churches, whatever you say really. So I went out a couple of days ago when it was overcast but it was bright, and took a load of photos of Old Portsmouth, as I find that Old Portsmouth is more photogenic than the middle of Portsmouth really. But obviously go wherever you can to get some good examples of photographs. So I took over 200 photos, as you can see here, of different angles of buildings, churches, you name it, probably took a photo of it. And so I'm just going to explain to you how I used the rule of thirds, how I used heights, different focal lengths, and 2 different techniques for taking photographs. So the first one is the rule of thirds. As you can see here, I have taken just my normal photograph and put it into Photoshop, and then I have just put a rule of thirds guidelines on top of it, just to see how I positioned my photograph. So you can see here that I have positioned this photograph in the bottom left corners here, but I have kept it quite central, and there's even amount of building on each set of the 2 squares on the left and right here. I have this view in my camera lens, and I know that on iPhone you can set up to have a grid view, so that might be a nice thing to kind of start with, so you can position your photographs a lot more critiquedly. I have it both on my phone and on my camera, but I can do it without now, as I have taken photographs for years. But it's just a good thing to kind of start with, just to get your eye used to putting your camera in certain positions using the rule of thirds idea. Another thing I did to take this photograph is I was actually on a mound. So if I show you here, I was standing, let me go up here. I was standing just around about here to get this view of this church. And the way that I stood was very much in front of the church, and I didn't try to get any of these residential buildings that were next to it. As you can see here, you can only see a few and a couple of cars, but you can see the grand scale of this church from where that I was standing. I stood slightly crouched, so not fully crouched like on the floor. I bent my knees just a little bit just so I could get a nice angle on the camera. So the camera that I use is a Canon 4000D. I have 3 lenses, so I have a standard lens that what I call my standard lens, which is an 18mm focal length to a 55. I have a 35 to an 80, and then I have also a very long macro telephoto lens. Good for taking long distance photographs. So I went with my trusty 18 to 55mm focal length lens to take all of these photographs that I'm going to show you. So this one was specifically, I had it around about 37mm focal length, and I had it on fully manual mode. So I chose my own shutter settings and my aperture settings. But obviously, if you've got a digital camera here, you can see that you've got 2 creative modes where you can literally just point and shoot, and everything else is done for you, just to get you used to the idea of holding a camera and using with the focus lengths and the shutter speeds and stuff. And then once you feel slightly more comfortable with it, you can go on to the just shutter speed mode, which is the TV, AV mode, which is just aperture priority, and then manual is fully manual. You adjust the shutter speed, the ISO, the aperture, you name it, you adjust it. And then on some digital cameras nowadays, you've got different options here. So you can see there's a portrait mode, a landscape mode, a macro mode. And then this little mode here is for when you do fast shooting. So something's moving very fast and you want to get a nice crisp shot of it. I've got a special one here for taking photographs of food, which I do quite often as I am a very passionate baker and cook. And then dark night photography, and then I also have a video setting on this camera so I can take video recordings. Enough about that. Then I have just a standard iPhone, the new iPhone SE, and then you can do a similar thing with the for the aperture and shutter mode priority, but you may have to get an app. But don't worry about it, because obviously at the start you'll just want to basically put your camera up and shoot, and just to get used to the idea of taking photographs. So if we move on to a second example of using the rule of thirds, is this portrait image here. You can see it's the same church, but I'm just slightly further back so I can get this lamppost in the corner of the image. So if I can just show you here where I was standing. So I was just standing just where this little lady is here, and I zoomed into about probably about a 52mm focal length to get this photograph, so I could get most of the church and this light in the photo and the curvature of this road. As the way that this is situated in the middle or bottom piece here, you can see that this very much draws your eye to the church. It's quite natural the way that it does that. And then also a main focus of it is this lamp, as it is sectioned into these three boxes very nicely. So you want to try, when you use the rule of thirds idea, you want to be putting or positioning your objects that you're taking a photograph in either in the middle to get a nice symmetry of the building, or just slightly off to the left or the right, so you can get a different perspective that most people wouldn't choose to take that from that perspective. Another example is a landscape one here, and this continues with the idea of using the building in the middle of this frame. So you can see here that it's very even. It's in the middle two pieces here, is on the left and the right, and it's on the left and the right here as well. A little bit goes into the top just to make the church look more grand and on a bigger scale. But you can see here the window is very much in the centre, and your eye is fully drawn to this church and not any of the residential buildings or the fence below here. I'm going to show you one more example using a portrait idea. So you can see here in Old Portsmouth, when I was walking around, I found this really, really nice old vintage door. So I decided to take a photograph of it. The lovely thing about photographs is the fact that you can capture these moments and use them as reference points as inspiration for design projects or anything like this. So I took a photo of this door, and you can see I have used the rule of thirds idea again. The door and its frame fills the whole photograph, so you get a lot more detail by doing it this way. So you can see the detail of the old wood, the fact that the glass behind here has been smashed, and the fact that the render on the building is chipped and quite old. So you can get a lot of history from this photograph, and the way that it is positioned is very nice. So these were all taken excuse me, these were all taken on my DSLR. But I also took some examples on my phone just to show to you that you do not need a nice DSLR to take good photographs. So I'm just going to get these photographs up here. So you can see I have taken the same photographs in the same positions that I was to show these examples. For this one in particular, I stood very close to the ground, so I crouched down, so my one knee was balancing myself on the floor, and I pointed my phone upwards to get the grand scale of the church. This then created this really nice photo, so you can see that I have used the rule of thirds. You can see that this is in the middle, and this gate here with the love heart is very much round the door and is in the centre of the image. I got the path and the road, so yes, I was standing in the middle of the road, did make sure there was no cars, and I took this picture to get the grandness of this church, as it is very old. It's from the 1850s. Which I probably am wrong now, but oh well, it doesn't matter. But you can see here that the roof here was blown off in World War II, and you can see how this window has survived. So if I go back, so I continue to walk. So here is the same door. This one you can see that it's slightly wonky. It's slightly tilting to the left. So once I go into Photoshop, I can straighten that out a bit more. However, the main advantage of using a phone compared to a DSLR, the phone captures so many more colours and definition in the work. So you can see here that this image is actually quite dark compared to this image here. Obviously, with this image, you can increase the exposure, increase the brightness, and this kind of thing. So you can do a little bit of editing or tweaking, which I'll show you in a minute. Excuse me, but the main advantage of using a phone, it does balance the colours and the lighting a lot better. So if I go further down, so I took a photo of the Spinnaker Tower. Who doesn't when you're on Spice Island? But a disadvantage of using the phone is that the focal length is fixed, and if you zoom in, you lose the definition of the photograph. So you can see here I have lost a little bit of definition and it looks a little bit fuzzy, but on here it's nice and crisp. But however, the Spinnaker Tower isn't this main focus. You mostly get drawn to this orange lifeguard dinghy thing here because it is the brightest thing, and there's a lot of sea and sky which is distracting your eye from the main focus, which is here. So if I go into Photoshop to show you the one that I took on my camera, you can see here, I'm just going to turn off the rule of thirds. There we go. So you can see here that because I use my DSLR, I can get a good focal length, which is a 55mm focal length. And you can see so much more detail, and your eye is instantly drawn to the Spinnaker Tower and this mast of this boat. So if I just go and show you one more example through the phone compared to the camera. So this is one that I took on my phone, and you can see the different colours in the clouds here. So you can see there's quite a bit bright here, and there's a bit more moody and atmospheric around here. So if I open the one that's in Photoshop, I think it's this one. There we go. It's a lot darker. There's a lot more of a dark spot here, and you can't see the definition in the clouds as easy. So there are disadvantages and advantages of using both, but you can experiment with both and you can still get a really decent photograph from using both ways. So now I'm going to go on to explaining how I edited these photos, how I'm going to edit these photos just to make them a little bit brighter, darker, just to make them a bit more atmospheric. And remove these spots here. So when I went out and took photographs, I unfortunately had a tiny weeny bit of dust on my lens, which was highly irritating, but I know how to get rid of it, so it's fine. So you can see here there's a little mark here. On this photograph you can see it's here. Here you can see the pattern. It likes to crop up every so often, but in some photos you can't see it, so in this one you can't see it. So I'm going to first edit this photo just to show you two different scales of using the editing techniques. So you can see here, you can see the whole building, you can see the grand scale of this building, and then I'm going to go on to do this door, which is a smaller focus, and you can bring out so much more detail. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to start with the spot healing brush tool on this side here. I'm going to click on this, because when you import a photo, it's instantly locked, so I'm going to unlock that. So now you can see here it says layer 0. So now you can edit the photograph. So I'm going to increase the diameter, which is control right click, and then just simply click over that blip and it's gone because it merges with the rest of the sky. So that's the first step done. And already it looks a lot better because that focus here isn't there anymore. So then I'm going to go to image. Let's reselect the layer. So let's go image, adjustments, brightness and contrast. This little window will pop up here. Sometimes it pops up right in the middle of your screen. So just drag it to the side so you can still see your photograph. Now these can adjust the brightness of the photograph so you can see if I put it down all the way down to the brightness, it's incredibly dark. If I do it all the way to the top, it's way too bright. So we're going to find a good middle ground, and sometimes you don't need to edit it. And sometimes it is better where it is. So I'm going to lighten it to about there. Then contrast deepens or lightens the colours that are there. So I'm going to lighten them a bit to about -10. Click OK, and that will be saved. So you can see that was it before, and then let's do redo, and that's it after. You can see the image is a lot more brighter already. So we're going to go back to mode, adjustment, then we're going to go to, let's have a look, exposure. Now a similar pop-up window will come up, and exposure basically explains on how bright or how dark the image is based on the amount of light that came through the camera lens. So I'm going to currently put that back to 0, so I can show you what it was before, and then go image, adjustment, exposure. So if I increase its exposure even by a little bit, you can see that this image is clearly overexposed. Once I've increased the exposure, you can the sky is completely whitewashed. You can see no definition. But if I do it again too dark, even just by 1.5, you can't see anything of the image. So I think I'm going to keep it around about 0.0 0.0 offset, just leave, and then gamma is just leave. So just going to click OK. So image mode, then I'm going to go to levels. So this little graph here explains how much light are in, what is the gradient of light in your photograph. So here is the darker, here is in like the middle ground, so your greys, and then here is your whites. And a good photograph is normally, there's at least kind of, the graph is quite even. So you can see here, because of the sky, it's very, very bright, and on this graph here, it's too bright. So if I'm just going to adjust it to this little level here, to be in line here, then I'm going to take this and put it to the edge of this one. Now I'm going to slide this little grey bar here just to see whether I want it a little bit darker or whether I want it a little bit lighter. So here, as much as this image does not exactly look great, this is good for if you want to sketch over images. So you can leave it like that, click OK, and then you can use this as a sketch background. You can print it, or you can draw it on Photoshop over the top of it. Excuse me, I need to drink more. So I'm just going to keep it around about there, I think. Just so I still get that brightness in the grass, but this is not too bright here, so I'm going to click OK. Then do image, adjustments. Let's have a look what we can do. So let's go to, I'm going to turn this photo into black and white and show you how the black and white photos can create a very much a different atmosphere. So you've got the reds and yellows, greens, cyans, blues, and magentas. That's a mouthful and a half. Or you can use this little drop down box here. So I'm going to do a blue filter. So you can see the difference from default. You can see quite a lot of detail in the bricks. You can still see a little bit of the sky, and you can still see the definition of the grass. So fiddle around and have a good play with the different modes here. Oh, I like that one, the maximum black. You can see the depth of that church and how, and the history behind it. So let's do neutral density. Oh no, a bit too bright. Yellow filter. Oh, I like that one. I like this one because you can see how the clouds were scattered behind the church. You get a bit more atmospheric than this than compared to anything else. I'm just going to leave that one. And there we go. So that's how you basically go towards editing your photographs. So I'm going to do this one here now. So I'm going to select the right layer, go to image, adjustments, brightness and contrast. Again, this little window will pop up. So I'm going to increase the brightness a little bit on this one, as it is quite dark. And then I'm going to reduce the... I'm going to increase the contrast, so I can get a little bit more definition of the wood texture on the door here. So I'm going to click OK. I'm going to turn this layer off so I can see the full photograph a lot better. So image, adjustments, levels. So I'm going to have a look. So you can see here, this is quite a good photograph in itself. You can see it's all even and there's no kind of spikes here like we saw in the other photograph where it was too overexposed. So I'm just going to drag this one here to the edge here and drag this one to the edge of the graph here. So now this is considered a perfect photograph. So I'm just going to click OK, and then go image, adjustments, yes, image adjustments, and then click on the exposure and see whether I'm just going to reduce the exposure just a teeny bit, so I can still keep the detail of this brick and the wood. So I'm just going to click OK, and there we go. So that's how you go towards really editing a basic photograph, including getting rid of these little imperfections here. So I'm just going to do this one. So I'm going to turn off that layer, unlock that one. I'm going to go to the spot healing tool, just going to do a little click there, and it goes. Yes, it has. Amazing. So now I'm going to go to image, adjustments, brightness and contrast again. This is your best friend to just judge on how bright or dark your photograph will be. So if you take a photograph that's a little bit too overexposed, if the images looks like this anyway, you can use this tool to brighten it or darken or whatever you want to do. So I am going to lighten that a little bit. I'm going to increase the contrast a tiny weeny bit, just so I can get this definition on the red orangey brick here. So I'm going to click OK. Mode, image adjustment, sorry, not mode, image adjustments, and then I'm going to do, let's do hue and saturation. So let's have a look. That is not the one I want actually. I want to do image adjustments, I want to do color balance. So you can do this and just play around with the amount of colors that are in the photograph. So you can put more red into it, you can put more pink and more blue. Obviously this is now quite a cool kind of trippy photograph, but we don't want that, so I'm just going to click cancel there. I don't think there's much I want to do to this photograph, but I am going to show you an example of how you can take loads of photographs of the same thing and merge them to make another. So I'm just going to expand this. You can see here that I took all different angles of this church. So I took just each side, the fences, the path, the wall, and the centre bit, the windows, and that kind of thing. So now I'm going to show you, let me just find it, let's do file, open. I'm going to show you what you can do. So let's go here, there we go, photo collage, open. This is a really big file because there's quite a few photos on just this one file, so there we go. I'm just going to click off that. So you can see here I have used all of these photographs, well, most of them, with these ones here, to create this image. And the reason why I've done this is you can get a completely different perspective and see how the building changes in different light conditions. All of these photos were taken on the same day, but you can see here that the sky was a little bit brighter, so the church was darker, but here it was quite level. So you can see here that the exposure level, the light exposure to the camera sensor, was changing like that. It was changing every 2 seconds. Excuse me. Really need to drink more. So by doing this, yes, I was standing in exactly the same spot. I was just taking different multiple photos. But because of the change in light, you can see how the building responds to the amount of light that it has. So you can see here in these photographs up here, you can't see really that much definition of the brickwork. Yet in this middle photograph here, you can see so much more. And over here, again, here was a little bit overexposed, but this one balanced it out again. So this is the kind of thing you can do with photographs to experiment what you want to do. So yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed the tutorial. And now I will launch the photography competition. I want you to go out to wherever you are in the world. I want you to use the techniques that I have mentioned here, using the rule of thirds, using high and lows, using perspective, the lighting, focal length, DSLRs, phone cameras, whatever. I want you to create your own photographs. I want you to go out, find an interesting building, and take a nice photograph of it, basically. Use the editing techniques that I have also showed you, just to help develop your understanding of how photographs can actually capture a building a lot more than you probably thought it could. And then I want you to write a short description just to explain of why you found this competition useful, why maybe you didn't like it and why, and how you will take this information that I have just said and put it towards your site. So yeah, I want you to use the techniques here, and I want you to explain in this short text how you're going to use these techniques towards your design project. So with photography, your eye sees differently to what you would see in the real world. So when you look through this lens or through your camera, your brain automatically starts to adjust, like, okay, this isn't a good photograph. If I just move slightly to the left or slightly to the right, I'm going to get a better photograph. And by doing this practice and doing this this technique and this system will help you think about how you draw your perspectives in design work and how you represent your work. What I'm hoping that it really does help, having the photography knowledge from doing A-level and everything like this, for me personally, has really helped me choose perspective views for my design work. And I just hope that the knowledge that I have has helped you and inspired you to look at your work a little bit differently, and to eventually help you in the end, because obviously tutors do love perspectives to show how you're building with work with people, with textures, with colours, and everything like this. So I'm hoping that these techniques that I have shown you, you'll get inspired by them and keep them in mind when you next do your design projects or your next perspectives and stuff like that. So if you've got any questions, leave them below, or give us a message on our past Instagram. But good luck with the competition. I hope to see all your submissions very soon. The competition will last for about a week, so the submission deadline will be the 6th or 7th of December. I can't quite remember right now. But go out, get creative, have fun with it, and I hope to see all of your submissions soon. Alright, bye!